I have two classmates from the Harvard Law School class of 1986 who would go on to become very famous. In fact, world famous, but for somewhat different reasons. One of my classmates was named Elana Kagan. She would go on to become a justice of the United States Supreme Court. And Justice Elana Kagan is most famous recently for kind of going out there publicly and stating that the members of the Supreme Court, those 9, need to be held accountable for their ethical practices. You wouldn't think that's controversial, but it is. And she points out, she's given a speech to say that power without accountability is not a healthy practice in a democracy. That's one of my classmates. The other famous classmate from Harvard Law class of 86 is named Kenneth Chesebro, who was recently indicted in the Georgia RICO case as one of 19 RICO co-conspirators to subvert democracy by overturning the results of the 2020 election. Now, Ken Chesebro is entitled to his defense, and he is absolutely presumed innocent. And the prosecutor must make the case beyond a reasonable doubt. But if convicted, he faces the real prospect of jail time. So I've been just thinking about the different trajectories. Supreme Court justice, RICO defendant, from the same context, the same class, the same place. And I'm trying to figure out, how does it happen that two bright young lawyers have such dramatically different trajectories? After all, I remember clearly, and I remember vividly, the vibe and the energy 40 years ago in the fall of 1983. You know New England weather. You know what September and October feel like. You know a great fall, crisp day. I was there. I'm Elana Kagan's classmate. I'm Ken Chesebro's classmate. And the vibe and the energy these are bright, curious, idealistic, uber-motivated young future lawyers who are going to go out and make a big positive contribution to the legal world and to the world at large. And so how did it turn out? How did it come to pass that two people from that idealistic vibe, that cocoon of positive energy, would have such different paths? What is the principle at play? What is that? And how does it connect with all of us, we who are neither Supreme Court justices nor RICO defendants? So I think the address for this conversation is an iconic and curious, in equal measure, iconic and curious verse from Deuteronomy. God says in Deuteronomy, I have placed before you life and death. I have placed before you blessing and curse. Choose life. Uvacharta b'chaim. And while this is an iconic teaching, if you just think about it for a second, it's just super curious. After all, what person, if presented the opportunity, you could have life or death, would say, hit me up with some death, I'll take some of that? What person, if given the opportunity to pick blessing or to pick curse, is going to say, oh, I think curse looks good, I'll take some curse today? What does it mean to choose when one alternative is clearly wonderful and one alternative is clearly terrible? What is the Torah telling us about what it means to choose. Put it this way. Let's intersect Deuteronomy's famous verse with the Harvard Law School class of 1986. Imagine it's September 1983, and there's 600 law students in that class, 4 sections of 150 each. And imagine that we are all registering at the beginning of school before our first class, and you have to sign up for your classes, etc. And then there's a question. By the way, to all these incoming 1Ls, would you like 40 years from now to be a Supreme Court justice or a RICO defendant? Now, I know that it was a diverse class and the students were all very different from one another, but I'm kind of thinking that 600 out of 600 would say, I'll take the Supreme Court justice package. I'm kind of thinking that 0 takers for the RICO defendant thing. Like, thank you for the invitation, RICO defendant, but I think I'm going to go with the Supreme Court justice package. So here's my question. If 600 out of 600 would choose to become a Supreme Court justice, and if 600 out of 600 would radically and emphatically and incontrovertibly reject becoming a RICO defendant, how then did Kenneth Chesebro become a RICO defendant? Now, at first blush, we might think that choosing, when we think about choosing, we think about we're at JP Licks, and it's finally our turn. And the kid behind the counter says, what would you like today? A scoop of chocolate or vanilla? Cake batter or Oreo? Salted caramel or Rocky Road? By the way, the answer is always salted caramel. You might think that to choose is the flavor of the moment. I'm kind of in a salted caramel place now. But I think that choosing in the Deuteronomy sense, choosing in the Uvacharta B'chaim, choose life sense, is different from JP Licks. Deuteronomy choosing is different from JP Licks choosing. After all, we've established Kenneth Chesebro would never have chosen the RICO defendant package. So what is choosing in the Deuteronomy sense? So I want to answer that question by asking 2 more questions. We have just finished a season, thank God, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where the big theme of the day is Teshuvah, right? Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, the 10 days of Teshuvah. And the word Teshuvah, usually translated as repentance, actually literally means return. The root of Teshuvah is lashuv, to return. And my question is, return to what? Why return? Where are we returning? Return to what? And the second question is, after Teshuvah comes Sukkot. Today's the first day of Sukkot, and it's Zaman Simchatenu, the festival of our joy. What's the connection between return, wherever it is that we're returning, and joy? So, where are we returning? So a traditional answer is we're returning to God. That's always a good answer in shul. We're returning to God. I want to offer up a different explanation about where we return. All of us humans, have multiple aspects of our personality. We have more noble and less noble. We have more idealistic and more cynical. We have more selfless and more selfish. To use the categories of rabbinic theology, every one of us here, no exception, has a Yetzer HaTov and a Yetzer Hara, a good inclination and a not great inclination. And they are perpetually in tension with one another. And our mission in life, the reason we do this, the reason we read this, the reason we come here, is that we want to strengthen our core, want to put noble in our core, want to put idealistic in our core, want to put hardworking and committed to decency in our core. We want to put our Yetzer HaTov in our core and strengthen our core. And I think that when we say we are returning, we are returning to ourself on our best day. What do you look like on your best day? What do you look like on your worst day? What do you look like on your best day? What do you look like on your worst day? We have all had plenty of those days in any given year. We are returning to our core, to us on our best day. And you know, in the physical world, how important core is. I remember when I had back surgery 15 years ago. I couldn't get up one morning. When I was done with the back surgery, and I met with the PT person for the first time, and now I'm in the market for wisdom. How can my back never hurt again? The PT person said, oh, it's all about your core. I said, no, it was my back. I had back surgery, not core surgery. No, it's all about your core. And if you'll strengthen your core, you'll have physical balance. And if you'll strengthen your core, you'll be able to walk upright. And if you strengthen your core, you'll have energy for the day. And that's true in the physical world. And it's also true in the spiritual world. And it's very easy to lose our core. That's true in the physical world. It's very easy to lose our core in the spiritual world too, because life is just constantly full of temptations. Nobody plans on being a RICO defendant. Nobody would choose the RICO defendant like you choose salted caramel ice cream. You get to be a RICO defendant by inches, not by big decisions, because you lose yourself. Because day by day you make decisions. You take shortcuts. You make a devil's bargain. You make a Faustian bargain. It's not much. It's okay. That's why early Genesis says, sin is always crouching at the door. One of the earliest teachings in the Torah. Because we know what a good core looks like. And it's so easy to lose our good core. And it's so easy to substitute our Yetzer HaTov, put our Yetzer Hara in there instead. So Teshuvah, return to you on your best day. Return to your core on your best day. I don't know what happened to Kenneth Chesebro. Because I was his classmate, I've been a little obsessed, and I've been reading 1,000 pages, anything I could read about it. Here's, if you Google Kenneth Chesebro, after Shabbos, of course, here's what you'll find. For 20 years, he was all about promoting and strengthening democracy. For 20 years, he worked for Professor Larry Tribe at the Harvard Law School, Constitutional Law School, for 20 years. And it is an utter mystery why, after 20 years of working for Larry Tribe and 20 years of strengthening democracy, he did what he is alleged to have done. That's a mystery. But what's not a mystery is how sin always crouches at the door and how easy it is for us to lose our core with a different core. So I asked you at the beginning, I said, this is not about Supreme Court justices because we don't really have any here. And this is not about RICO defendants because thank God we don't have any here. If you're an ordinary person, how does these principles apply? So I want to tell you a story about how these principles intersect with us, with ordinary lives. Shortly before Rosh Hashanah, I get an email out of the clear blue, unsolicited, from a woman who writes, Rabbi, I'm not going to be able to go to services on the holidays. I just want you to know I'm going to follow on live stream. Just want you to know I love the shul. Want you to know I love the services. Want you to know I love the clergy team. Want you to know that I love your sermons. I'm not going to miss a second of your service. And then she writes, Rabbi, I love you. Signs off. Out of the blue, unsolicited love and grace. Right before Rosh Hashanah. Right before Yom Kippur, she dies. She dies. And her name is Irene Bloomstone. And I learned the following, I mean, she did always end every conversation with, "Rabbi, I love you." But I learned a few things. She ended every conversation with everybody, "I love you." And when she died, it turns out that at her core was radiating love. And it turns out there's this principle, it's a metaphysical principle in the universe called the radiator principle. What you radiate out comes back to you. It's the simplest principle and the most ineluctable principle in the universe. It's that simple, radiator principle. What you radiate out comes back to you. You radiate out love, love comes back to you. You radiate out negative energy comes back to you. So she had radiated that out, and everybody knew in the shul. I mean, she died right before Yom Kippur, and my colleagues and I were talking about, "Oh my God, Irene Bloomstone, I loved Irene, I loved Irene, I loved Irene." And then we started getting these kinds of emails. Here's an email. These are from not family members. These are from kind of distant peripheral friends, and there's a gazillion of them. Dearest the daughter, there are no words that can convey the devastating loss of your mother. She was the most remarkable, the most loving, the most supportive soul. Each of us felt wrapped in the blanket of her love. Her neshama shone so brightly to all who were lucky enough to be near and with her. She was like the sun on earth, beaming pure light to all. The world and each of us in it will forever be better off because of her. Another one, friend, not family. My heart is broken in a million pieces, and therefore I can't even imagine the pain you're both going through. Your mother was the brightest light, and she made everyone feel so special and important. In reality, she really was the special one, but she never took the spotlight. I just loved her so much. Now we're ready for the second question. The first one is return to who? And the answer is return to your core. Who are you on your best day? That's where you're returning. Second question, why happiness after teshuvah? So it's very clear. I mean, this is the easiest question in the sermon, okay? If you lose your core, if you lose who you are on your best day, bad, sad, hard, broken. But if, despite the fact that sin crouches at the door, you're able to strengthen your core and deepen your core, then good things happen. Then you generate that. Chag Sameach.